Welcome to this second edition of the LinkedIn Live, a show where I talk about the strategies and tactics that help leaders craft their personal narrative. Today, we're speaking with Lizzie Azzolino. Hey, Lizzie, welcome to the show.
Hello, so good to see you, and thanks for getting up for me.
Of course. Fantastic to be here. I'm going to do a quick intro about Lizzie. So Lizzie is based in LA. She's the founder of Work with Lizzie. She's a partner to leaders, entrepreneurs, and organizations, and the organizations they care deeply about as they navigate their most significant transitions. Through strategic advisory, intuitive mastery, and her proprietary story coaching method, she helps leaders and organizations not only see who they really are and align their work with what truly moves them forward, but also connect with the right people and opportunities to accelerate their growth. This work goes far beyond the surface. It's about becoming who you're really here to be. So, with that amazing introduction, thank you for being here, Lizzie. So, just before we started, I hit live on this. Lizzie and I were chatting, and obviously, I had a set of prepared questions that I wanted to go into. But I've known Lizzie for a little while. I've been fortunate to know her for a little while through another network. Um, and we got chatting and we were talking about what is it that is a focus area, or what is my energy like right now, what is shifting for me right now. And I was telling Lizzie that, and some of this might resonate with some people more than others, and that's okay. But like for me personally, I definitely believe in this idea of multiple parallel realities existing at the same time, and especially when you lean into um, you know quantum physics and quantum mechanics, and the fact that there's a unified field, and in a different way that also helps me. So at least for me, it makes helps make sense of this idea of akashic records. It's also something that Lizzie leans into, the idea that a unified field of consciousness exists, and so you are here in this field to experience it and to embody it and to show up as your best self. And I think that's what Lizzie helps facilitate, in channeling you to be able to do that and show up in the best way, right? So that's sort of where I'm at right now. And in a similar way, so I'd love to know from you, Lizzie, to start this conversation. Um, what's happening with you right now, and what's resonating with you right now. Maybe we'll start with that and we just go where this conversation goes.
Well, what's coming up for me right now is I love that we're having this conversation in public because I remember like years ago now at this point when we first spoke, and it was just on the phone. Um, India, I was in San Francisco at the time. And so we'd speak early morning my time. And early morning my time, I go on walks. I'm like, I'm not going to sit in front of a computer. I'm walking. And we would actually talk about this and like some of your early experiences, experiencing reality in a different way. And the truth is, we are all, while it feels and looks different to each and every one of us right now, that is what's happening on an individual and a collective level, myself included. We are in a really, it's oversaid that we're in a significant time of change. And really, it's an inflection point. And we are moving from who we've been to who we're becoming. And we're sort of in that space in between right now. And I'm coming out of one of those cycles myself right now. And so every single one of these transformative cycles, I find myself even more deeply rooted in who I am, really, why I am really here. And it takes a painful process of removing layers of who I'm not. And
Mm,
so you brought up the idea that multiple realities exist in the here and now. And my work for so long, in my own life, like in my own life, my inner work, and then also now my work with people, which was not a part of the plan, but that is how things happen, is to help people see and feel the story that they're living in, the story of who they are, who they need to be, what's possible for them, to really see that story that's constructing their reality now and also predicting their future. And then to note that that is the smallest sliver of this expansive reality of possibilities.
mm-hmm.
And our story is typically constructed from early childhood conditioning. One of my teachers, I'm going to show something to you, and then I want to pause and see what you have to say. But I'm going to make some noise for a second,
Yes.
because I need to get a prop. I was not prepared for this. So one of my earliest teachers, this was like 10 years ago, the first time I did any coaching type training before, and she said, "You come into the world this full piece of paper." Like this full and innocent and expressive piece of paper. Like the world is your oyster. You're alive, you're creative. And then something happens where you feel like you need to hide a part
Mm,
of yourself,
mm,
where you have to start hiding the things that set you apart from everyone else.
mm-hmm.
The things that, anyway, you end up crumbling yourself into this like neatly packed ball
Mm,
of what we think it takes to lead a successful life or to be happy. And we travel through life. And it's not to say that this paper doesn't unravel at some point,
yeah.
but we all hit a point and then many points where the paper just starts to unravel. And we're like, we just can't hide anymore. And it's painful.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are in the process of becoming a full piece of paper
Yeah.
again, which is a much more expansive way to live.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're talking about like for me, at being a creative individual, and we're
Mm.
both sort of come from that sort of world, right? At different points in time, I felt how, as a creative individual, you're channeling something that a lot of other people cannot see, and
Hmm.
so you're helping shape something that amorphous into something that people can actually physically see, right? So what that physical
Mm.
thing might translate to, oh, you're creating a logo, or you're creating a website, or you're creating a narrative, or whatever that might be, and you're channeling in that. And I think, inherently that comes from a place of curiosity, of being curious about the world. And so much, exactly like you said, so much of that is so real about ourselves when we're children. And when you see
Mm.
children, they're inherently curious. And I remember I read somewhere else also that you can enter a conversation either with curiosity or belief, right?
Mm.
I'm entering a conversation because I'm open to whatever happens. Just like in some ways, this conversation also, right? I had a belief that I'm going to go with a set of questions, but I'm open to being curious about where this sort of goes, and how so much of that, in just inherently being curious about myself, I'm open to being curious about other people, and then therefore
Mm.
helping enable how they can show up as their best selves and say in the work that I do presently in helping leaders how shape their narratives, and exactly what you also do, right? In working with leaders. And I'm sort of curious to know also, do you find that with those, how does that unraveling process actually happen?
Well, it's nonlinear. We like to think that there's a process, but it's a nonlinear process. And we'll talk about it. One thing I would love to share. So, children, you mentioned are inherently creative and curious. Children are also full of desire, unfiltered desire. And they express those desires in like loud ways and loving ways. And it's from this completely unconstrained place. And so part of the process is identifying what it is you deeply desire.
Hmm.
The desire within you that you may not even have fully connected to because you immediately stop it in its tracks with, that's not possible for me. I don't
Yeah.
know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's really our curious desire that is unique to us, our
Yeah.
curiosity, our desire that's unique to us. And so, um, in a first session with someone, one of the things that we identify is what this moment is about. People who come to work with me don't just come when everything is like feeling good and dandy, right? They come when they're in a real crossroads, in a moment where they've done a lot of things they're proud of. They've been successful. They have a full life, but they feel a longing for more and they
Mm-hmm.
don't always know what that is yet. We
Okay.
start to identify what this moment is about right now. What is the chapter you're closing? Who have you been? What was important to you? What are the beliefs, the behaviors, the habits that have gotten you to this place?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that's pulling you forward, even though you don't? My dog, I have my dog Barkley with me, and he's going to bark. Uh, even if
Hey.
you don't logically know how to make it happen. And so I work a lot in the world of stories. We start by really revealing the story that you've been living in, being
Yeah.
able to look at it from a place of like real awareness and non-judgment and so much compassion, and
Yeah.
then choose the story and the reality that you want to construct, the one that moves you forward.
But what do you think stops people from actively reflecting on their story or having awareness around that story? Or what could they do to bring better awareness around what their existing story is?
We stop ourselves, myself included, we stop ourselves from really asking these big questions because we know that when we really answer them, it's going to require a lot of big change.
Yeah.
It's going to require a lot of moving into the unknown, right? Part of our brains, our nervous systems, they're wired to keep us safe. But safe doesn't really mean safe. It means known,
Yes. Familiar.
right? So even when we know like this is not what we want, we feel a major sense of discomfort. And actually our bodies try to teach us to do the opposite of moving into the unknown because it is unknown, it is unsafe. But that is what is required. And so we don't always look inward because we're afraid of the answers and then what that will mean for the bravery that is required to move forward.
Yeah, and as you're sharing some of this, like I can feel myself feeling a little vulnerable right now, right? Of because it is like you said, it's easier to lean into what is known because that's familiar, because that's comfortable, and I wonder, for example, like I imagine when someone works with you, in some ways it's you're going through a transformative experience, right? You come from a place of of change. And a lot of that, at least for me, one big trigger event in some ways in the recent past, which happened in a little under a year ago when I trained for a triathlon.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, I trained for a triathlon, and I remember I was having this conversation with this friend of mine in was it April last year? April last year, and she said, "Yeah, I'm doing this Ironman, a half Ironman triathlon, and it's intense. I mean, the regular triathlon is of a certain distance, and Ironman is almost double that, or half Ironman is almost double that. So, but I had 6 months, and I was like, I'm excited. The more I'm talking about it, I'm sort of excited about the what this is going to shape up like. Fast forward, I went through a whole bunch of training. I committed to it. I got a coach. I bought the bike. I got all the gear. I was waking up so many days when I just did not want to get out of bed. And it's like I'm waking up at 7 in the morning and I'm going to jump into a freezing cold pool, but I have to do it because that's what I've committed to, right?
Mm,
Fast forward further. Um, at some point in time, I got injured and I couldn't do the actual event. Um, but I think that in itself, that process of going through that,
yes.
so literally life changing for me, where I got to a point where, when you're just sort of thinking about this is what I'm going to do, and everything is aligned towards that. And a lot of the
Yes.
stuff, like you said at the outset, the layers that are not needed, they sort of peel away. And my BS meter got so sharp. I was like, I can't deal with my own, BS, and I can't deal with other people's BS. So, and that in itself, that opened up so much for me. It really, really did.
Yes.
And I find myself leaning into the familiar fairly often, but I think I maybe catch myself a little better now.
Yes. The awareness increases, and the I just recorded a podcast episode actually a couple days ago with someone named Ben Leonard. He's a former chief design officer many times over who's now in the middle of a transition. And one of the biggest things we talked about is what this that we're talking about, this real growth, this like embodying your personal narrative and in integrity with who you really are now, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more you're like, I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but I know that this is what I'm here to do. Like, we
Mm,
are here to grow, to evolve beyond what we've known, to constantly be expanding what's possible for ourselves and for the world around us. It's like we are not here to live a life of leftovers. I mean, maybe some people are. I'm not. The people I work with are not.
mm,
And if there's one thing I know, it's that every person I'm coming into contact with right now is starting to realize, myself included, we're here for something greater right now with all that's happening. Like, we're all here right now for a reason. It's
mm,
not just by chance.
mhm.
And so, like, this is the life we get. So we may as well expand ourselves and see what's possible.
Yeah, you know, um, like we're stepping into this age of Aquarius, and then that you have whenever I say age of Aquarius, that song comes to mind, which came out in the 70s or
It's
80s,
so
right?
good. Yeah,
That's
let the sun shine in.
totally right. And it also feels for me like just this thing that I'm doing right now, which is working with leaders and help them sort of shape their narratives on LinkedIn specifically, very related to, but related to what you're doing. But at different points in time, I've also felt some degree of discomfort in doing this, and I'm wondering, is this what I'm meant to be doing? But
Hmm.
I think it also, at least for me, and I'd love to know your perspective on this in terms of maybe identifying, like, how do you sort of maybe see signals or messages that are coming to you that are channeling you in maybe in a certain direction. I find
Mhm.
that at the outset when I jumped into this space, uh, it was just okay. I'm learning something and I'm going to share it, and from that, more came my way than I consciously imagined it would.
Yes.
And in the same vein, today when I'm sort of doing this, more clients are naturally finding me of the kind that would like to work
Yes.
with, and that's
Yes.
happening at a faster pace than in some ways that, again, I find myself, okay, why is this happening? And I question it, etc. But there must be a reason for me as a medium, as a conduit, or as a channel, to help enable this to happen for other people. So I guess I'm curious to know from you, like, how do you how does someone identify those signs, or do you need to be open a certain way to be able to see those?
How did you, what did it feel like when you realized this is an area of interest of yours? What did that feel like? How did you know, oh, I'm going to start doing this and sharing what I'm learning and just be curious? What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, from the work side, I was doing something different, and
Yes?
one marketer, she said, "Hey, can you help our MD with his personal brand?" I was like, "How hard can it be?" And then because I was looking at AI tools and everything, and then I realized hey, this is something that um, is seems to be important to a whole bunch of people, and they're thinking about it. And as I leaned into it, I guess what I found, I'd always been curious about this idea of building in public and how a lot of people talk about their narratives and their journey, and they just sort of share that, and that brings in. And I guess this allowed me to explore that a little bit more. And the more I sort of put it out there, more, it's like I'm putting out a certain kind of vibration, and that vibration is pinging back, and then
That's right.
it's
Yep.
resonating back and forth, right? And it's just becoming bigger and bigger.
That's right. Yep.
So, and that felt
Yes.
energizing.
Yes, that's right. It's all about energy. Everything is energy. So you were creating from a place of real truth and aliveness for you,
Yeah.
sharing something. We are here to share. We are here to create. We are here to contribute from a place of aliveness and and alignment. And do you feel the distinction between something moving you forward, like a creativity and an energy and a calling that's moving you forward to a place of sharing, versus trying to figure something out? Like, what is it that I should do? Remaining in a place of stagnancy.
Yes.
You just follow the calling that moves you forward and share generously and create from that place. And you
Yes.
will be shifting your energy. And then you become a match for that, that energy and the
Yeah.
people and the opportunities and the experiences that are in line with that.
That aligned with that, right? I mean, the more I think
Yes.
about it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so anytime I find myself feeling stuck around something, I start to realize that I'm living in this reality of I'm stuck. And everything in my reality is reinforcing my stuckness or my unhappiness or my feeling of isolation or not enoughness. And when I connect to my creative impulses, even though they might not make sense, and move forward from that place, it's like everything shifts in an instant.
I have one question, and as we come up to this is the thing about these 30 minutes, right? They go by so quickly,
Oh my
and
gosh, yeah, this
yeah.
is,
So I mean, we
time
have
flies. In this reality, time is, what is time?
what is that? So we're about 5 minutes to the point that you just made about finding that, leaning into that creative energy, and drawing a paddle from, or drawing from something that we talked about earlier, which is about your curiosity around as you were as you were as a child. So
Mm.
um, one question I have, and there's one other question that I'd love to get to because we have a few of them, but at least I want to cover this one other one. So the question I had was, how is it that you find, is there any way that, how do you lean into that inner child or that inner curiosity or that inner generous place that maybe exists in all of us in a way
Mm.
that can then show up externally in the work in a way that you can maybe also shift your energy and what you're experiencing right now?
Oof. It's a big it's a big question with not a very logical answer. Um, I'm just going to give it
Yeah.
because it's a long answer in reality that cannot fully be explained through logic. One question to consider, or one truth to consider, is we don't discover who we are, we create who we are through our
Okay.
actions, through our words, through our expression, through the people that we surround ourselves with. And so rather than ask myself, because I know we're here to talk about personal narratives, right? Like personal branding, rather than ask myself, like, who have I been and what makes sense based on who I've been? It's who do I want to be?
Mm.
Who do I want to be?
Hmm.
And to see what happens, like give yourself permission. Everyone listening,
Yeah.
give yourself permission to take out a journal, like ideally like a physical piece of paper. And at the top, write, who do I want to be? And set a timer for 10 minutes. Now it seems like a long time. I promise it'll fly by. Put your pen down when the timer starts and do not stop writing. What this is doing is it's moving beyond the logical linear mind. It's tapping into your creative, intuitive mind and real truth. Do not stop writing.
Mm.
Go back, read it, highlight what stands out, and those will be the seeds of what's next for you. But the truth is, it's not just about what's next for you. It's about who you really are right now that's already here. Because as we talked about at the beginning, we are these expansive beings, but we start to silo ourselves into this sliver of reality to keep ourselves
Reality.
safe for good reason. But allow yourself to expand. And then from that place, you can narrow in and get really focused. And then the
Yeah.
more focused you get on who you want to be, the more, to your point, the more aligned your actions become. And this new reality starts to be here right now.
Yeah, amazing. I'm definitely going to get to that exercise right after this conversation. I do want to get to. We don't have too much time, but I want to get to this one question, Lizzie,
Great.
that's come in because it's also in some ways very aligned to what you and I are doing, which is one of the things is both of us have a talk show, right? So
We have a
listening
talk. Do I have a talk show? Oh, I have a podcast.
to the
I want to start calling it a talk show.
I mean, it is right.
Great.
Um, so, so the question that we have is: I'm naturally extroverted. I run a talk show, have a strong social footprint, and thrive on engaging conversations. However, I'm about to meet a highly successful leader who is deeply introverted and prefers to operate behind the scenes. How can I craft my personal narrative in a way that resonates with them without overwhelming or alienating someone who values discretion and a low profile approach to success?
Well, what's coming up for me is did you say this is a woman?
It
Is
is,
that
yes.
it is? When did this when did this woman, as she looks back, when did she start to believe that she needed to contain who she was to make other people comfortable? When did that start to happen? What is that? What is that story? And what would happen if she gave herself permission to experiment with the truth that what will allow the other person to show up in their greatest integrity is for her to feel like she can show up in hers.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Yeah, because like you said at the outset, if you're vibrating a certain way, then you will
Mm.
attract the same um, frequency of vibration as well. And
What would you say? What would you how would you answer that question?
I mean, the short one is I plus one on Lizzie's answer, so I resonate with the same thing. But yeah, it's exactly that, right? Like I find, so I believe for a while now that like attracts like is more real, and this idea of opposites attract is a very hallmark card kind of
Mm,
idea. So the more I'm being honest and true to myself, and I have to be thankful, Lizzie, to you for this conversation, because one of the things for me personally, on sharing stuff online with some of the stuff that I'm writing is how is it that I can share. I have strong spiritual beliefs,
yes.
and
Yes.
religion and spirituality are two different things. They're
Yes.
related, but they're different. And how is it that I can share? How do I share that? And how do I
Mm,
put that out into the world? And I think sometimes if that means something, if that really means something to you, and you really want to do it, then a way shows up. And for me, as it turned out, was this conversation, where otherwise I would not really be talking about quantum realities and parallel universes and this kind of thing openly. But I'm doing that right now, right? And I think through this, whoever aligns to this will show up. So yes, plus
amazing.
one on
Yes.
this.
Integrity. What I, you said like attracts like. It's my belief that integrity attracts integrity, which does not mean the same. I mean, it does mean the same because we are all one to talk
Yes,
about spirituality, but integrity attracts integrity. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel that from you, which is I'm really grateful for that.
amazing. Thank you very much. And we're a couple of minutes over time, so
Yeah.
I'd love to, if someone had to follow you, get in touch with you, how can they do that? Where should they go to know more about Lizzie and the work that you do?
More about Lizzie. Well, I'm about to pull down my entire website because new website is,
Oh,
is,
wow.
is to
Okay.
come. But you can find me at workwithlizzie.com or Lizzie at Work with Lizzie. I check LinkedIn often. People reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then I also have a podcast called Now at Work, which is, well, or a talk show called Now at Work, which you can find on Apple and Spotify. And I have conversations not dissimilar to the really honest ones from a place of integrity, like the one we're having right here with leaders, people, experts, teachers who are in the process of stepping into their integrity and their own process of doing that.
Amazing. Thank you. And for the website is already there in the comments, so you can definitely check that out. And like Lizzie said, there's a new one that's on the way, and I'm sure that'll have great set of surprises. Thank you so much for this, Lizzie. I really, really, truly, from my heart, appreciate this conversation. It's very special for me, and I'm sure we will keep chatting any which way. To the viewers who tuned in, thank you so much for joining us.
Hmm.
There's another conversation happening next week. Like I said, I'm going to be doing these every week. The one that we're doing next week on the 11th is with Himanshu Bhardwaj, who will be talking about designing with joy, right? So how does
Oh,
joy show up in your own persona and the work that you do, and how do people experience joy? So tune in for that
oh.
one, and thanks for joining us.
That's so amazing. Yeah, I love that. It's Pisces season right now, which is all about joy. So it's very fitting.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Amazing.
good.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
Lizzie. Thank you so much.